How often do we stop to think about what really happens behind those songs that we stream every day or listen to on the radio? And while we're busy curating the best playlists or humming along to the radio, there is a complex engine of technology, policy and people that are all working tirelessly to make sure that that artist that we love actually get paid for their work. So today I'm going to be joined by the President and CEO of SoundExchange, a name that might not ring out like a chart topper, but it's instrumental in shaping fairer and a more transparent music industry. And under my guest's leadership, SoundExchange has distributed more than $12 billion to artists and rights holders. And they've also fought for legislative fairness through the American Music Fairness Act, and also embraced technology and data to balance innovation with artist protection, which is so important, especially in an era where AI could easily rewrite the rules of music creation. So if you're a music guy like myself, pour yourself a coffee, settle in, and let's lift the curtain on what it really takes to power the future of music. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure, Neil. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. My name's Michael Huppe. I'm the President and CEO of SoundExchange. For those who don't know, SoundExchange is a company based in the U.S. that helps administer the back end of 3,500 streaming services online. So we basically collect from many of the large and small non-interactive radio, lean back, sort of linear radio that happens online with names like SiriusXM, iHeart, Pandora, names you've heard, Music Choice. They all pay us to use the music, and we pay it out 50-50 to the artists and the record labels. We are by and of the recorded music industry. Our board is made up of indie labels, major labels, unions, artists, studio producers, trade associations. So we basically represent the entire recorded industry, and we pay out over $1 billion US annually to over 800,000 accounts. If you are played on any of these stations and commercially relevant in the music industry, you probably get a check from us.
Wow, incredibly cool. And that is one of the many reasons that I invited you on the podcast today, because every day I try and get people thinking differently about how technology impacts us, areas in our life that maybe we don't associate technology. And I think just listening to a few tunes on a radio station is such an area. So, Michael, how are you at SoundExchange using technology and data to ultimately ensure music creators are paid accurately and fairly in such a fast-changing industry? Because I suspect for many people listening, they don't think about technology and data, but it's at the heart of everything that you do, right?
That is a great, great question. And you're exactly right. Consumers want to enjoy the music as they should. They shouldn't be worried necessarily with how the artists ultimately get paid for that music. But tech is in our DNA for sure. Neil, we are digital natives. We were born into the digital era, which, by the way, contrasts us with a lot of other organizations in the music industry. Music industry's been around a long time, and a lot of them were born in the analog era and trying to convert over to digital. So tech imbues every aspect of our business. On the data front, we have developed the best recording database in the world of sound recordings, over 140 million tracks that are cleaned, deduped, sourced from the rights owners. So we have, I would argue, the best sound recording database in the world. We have a custom-built royalty processing platform. You need a platform to pay out that $1 billion a year. It is the quickest and most efficient platform in the world for what we do, and it operates at a much larger scale than any of the people around the world or entities around the world that do what we do. Another way that technology helps is we're big proponents of data standards. I imagine a lot of your listeners delve into data standards now and then, but metadata, the information about the music, is the oil in the engine. It's critical to make sure that data is right. So we are pushing constantly throughout everywhere we can in the industry to have through organizations like DDEX or through data standards like ISRC and IASWC, all trying to standardize how data is exchanged in the industry. And lastly, so let's see, how long has it been now? I'll mention AI.
Yeah. We've done well. It is a tech podcast.
I felt like we went a long time. We are using artificial intelligence in a variety of ways. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, later, because there's good and bad to AI when it comes to the music industry. But we are using AI in all sorts of ways to improve efficiency, with natural language processing, help with matching, fraud detection, or all sorts of things in the AI world where we can make our system work better.
And if we just take a step back from the technology a moment, obviously I'm based in the UK. There's 4,000 miles between us, and you guys have the American Music Fairness Act. Tell me more about that, what that means for artists, and how close we are to seeing that becoming law too.
Well, Neil, I appreciate you bringing that up. I didn't mention up top, another thing we do is we are big advocates in the industry for the value of music. Again, we represent everybody from labels to producers to artists to unions, everyone that I mentioned up top. And the American Music Fairness Act is an effort to get terrestrial radio, AM, FM radio over the air, to get them to pay for the recordings that they use. Most people don't know that in the U.S. That doesn't happen. So if you hear Bruce Springsteen on the FM radio, whoever wrote the song he may be singing does get paid, but the actual recording artists does not. That makes the U.S. alone in the industrial world. Everyone else does pay the artist, and it is something we've been fighting for a long time, to get the $12 billion U.S. over-the-air radio industry to pay for its primary input, which is the music, the recordings. It's been something that's Frank Sinatra fought for. We've been fighting for it ever since. We're making a lot of progress, and it's an issue that spans the political spectrum, right? If you're on the conservative side, it's a property rights issue, a trade imbalance issue, because it happens in Europe and it doesn't happen here. It's about having a level commercial playing field so the free market can work. And if you're more on the progressive side, it's about, it's a labor issue, right? Paying people for their work, paying them fair compensation. So it's something that appeals to everyone on the political spectrum, and we're simply trying to bring America in line with the rest of the industrial world. So that's what AMFA, as we call it, is all about, the American Music Fairness Act.
Wow, I'm not going to be releasing a cover version in the US anytime soon. Then, but I mean, back to the technology. How are you at SoundExchange? How are you helping the industry find that right balance between that AI-driven innovation you talked about a few moments ago and protecting a creator's rights? Because there's a lot of talking points around this at the moment, isn't there? And AI and its impact on the industry.
There definitely are. AI is a fascinating subject, and it really has a great. There's a good side to it and a troubling side to it, and we need to lean in because it's only going to get bigger. AI is not going away. So, look, first and foremost, let me talk about it from the risks.
Yeah,
we absolutely have to protect creators and make sure that we don't lose human input. SoundExchange is actually a founding member, along with many other organizations, actually over 100 wide-ranging organizations around the world, of something called the Human Artistry Campaign. And that basically stands for the proposition that while AI is an excellent tool and should be used as such, we still need to make sure that we embrace human expression and human creators. Only humans are really capable of communicating the endless intricacies and nuances of the human condition that we all celebrate in our music. So the Human Artistry Campaign tries to make the point that we must always protect creators and recognize the human value of AI. I often talk about the 3 C's sometimes, something called consent, credit, and compensation. AI should feel free to use people's content in order to build their algorithms, but they should do it with their consent, with their credit, and they should do it for a fair licensing compensation. So that's the risk side. But, there's fascinating positive sides to AI as well. Ethically used, AI can bring a lot to the music industry, and it's already showing that. So, I'll give you an example. a couple years ago, maybe 18 months ago. There was a Korean pop band that was able to drop on the same day the same recording in 6 or 8 different languages. And it's actually sounds like the singer singing, but, AI was able to convert that to foreign languages. You have other things like people marketing their signature sound. If you're Tom Morello, who's, a great guitar player, and he has a very signature sound because he uses special amps and limited release pedals. With his permission, he's developing an AI tool where people can sound like him, if they want to. Or you have something else I call music resurrection, where people who are no longer with us can come back from beyond and, perform new songs. Or if maybe they can no longer perform because of a tragedy. I actually testified on this issue with Randy Travis a couple months ago. Randy Travis suffered a stroke many years ago, but yet because of AI, he dropped his most recent track at the end of 2024. So AI can do really great things from a creative standpoint, and it obviously has benefits for, auditing and fraud detection. So point is, there's a lot of great tools and capabilities AI brings to the table. We just need to make sure it's done in an ethical way that doesn't cut out the human creators, which really form the basis of what creates the AI product.
I had no idea around the Randy Travis story. That's a great example there. And I'm curious, are there any other real-world examples of how SoundExchange's advocacy and use of tech and data has really made a difference to artists and indeed rights owners too?
There are many examples of that. In some ways, everything we do to help make the back end work smoother, all those data standards I talked about and databases and great platforms, all of that removes friction, I call it, friction in the industry. And that makes the money flow quicker and more accurately with less waste. So that helps all artists. Another thing that we are, I think, pretty well known for are the rates. We fight for artists to get paid more for their music in the areas that we operate, and we have successfully gotten rates up very high. When I first started, for instance, SiriusXM was paying us 2% of revenue. They're now paying us 15.5%, as an example. So we're trying to get artists and creators and labels paid more for their music. But another thing that we're doing over in Europe, a lot of countries do not pay American artists for their music because we don't have all the exact same rights they do, and we're pushing for a concept where people should just be paid fairly in every country. Whenever a country collects for anything, they should pay it out to everybody regardless of their nationality. So those are just some of the ways that we help artists and rights owners. Another thing that we do is we do deals around the world. So when people are members of SoundExchange, we can collect for them around the world for this type of music. And we have, 65, 70 agreements. We just entered one with South Africa last year for the first time ever. American artists are getting paid out of South Africa. So those are just some of the ways that we advocate for artists. We do some smaller things too, like, last year there was a push to make it harder for artists to tour in the U.S. This may shock you, there were some heightened visa requirements that made it difficult for artists to cross the border, and we pushed back against those, and with a lot of others in the industry, and help make that keep that from happening. So we do things big and small to basically, so rights owners and artists can practice their craft and focus on the music.
And I was reading before you came on the podcast today, with over $12 billion distributed so far. It's a huge industry that we're talking about here. And looking forward, what kind of improvements are you planning to make to these royalty payments that we're talking about that might make them even more transparent and more efficient thanks to the technology?
It is a constant battle. We are never satisfied, right? Constantly trying to improve and be more efficient. I think the Japanese have a concept, I think they call it Kaizen, which is the notion of constant improvement. We're always fighting for higher rates. That's one thing that we're doing. We're constantly, as I said earlier, investigating ways that AI can safely help with our distributions without, disclosing personal data. Obviously, using that and other technology to help and identify and fight fraud. And we're always trying to make the customer experience better, constantly working on our portals, constantly figuring out how can we make it easier for customers and our members to deliver us the data that we need. At the end of the day, we would love for creators to focus on creating, right, and not on databases and delivery specs.
And what I love about what you're doing here is you're covering everything from those small indie artists to massive creatives attached to major labels. So I'm curious, how are you helping, or what's shaping SoundExchange's vision for the future of music tech? Where do you go from here? What drives you?
Well, what drives us is really the people we represent. Our board is made up of the entire industry, as I said, major labels, indie artists, major artists, the unions, and it allows us to come together in the boardroom where all the interest groups can collaborate and move forward with common solutions, right? Progress happens quickest and most appropriately when all of the interest groups are aligned. So we work together as a whole industry to do things like strike partnerships that are important. For instance, we just did a partnership with an entity called Music Nation in the UAE to create the first ever collective so that performers in the UAE can get paid. We've worked together as an industry to pass legislation that makes the industry work better. So it's kind of always our North Star is maximizing the value of music and making sure that everyone that participates in the creative process is fairly compensated for it.
And technology has made a massive impact here and creating so many different opportunities for artists, but it's not all plain sailing. So I'm curious, what are the biggest challenges that you face when you're pushing for fairer royalties, especially from areas like terrestrial radio, who maybe don't want to be offering more money or more royalties? What are the biggest challenges that you face there?
Well, yeah, you're right to raise the challenge, especially of terrestrial radio. They're very politically powerful. And, we have done a lot to advance fair royalties, as I've talked about earlier, getting the rates increased here and overseas. When it comes to terrestrial radio, the biggest challenge, well, it's I can say in one word, Neil, politics, right?
Yeah.
It's always harder to pass legislation than it is. It's a lot easier to block it. Easier to block than to pass, and that rule is true in spades in the current political climate. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you. So it's really just making sure that people in positions of power in Congress and the administration know more about this issue. We have momentum. We have, it's an issue that's been building for decades, and the arc of history is with us on this. That I'm confident.
And before talking to you today, I was talking to a guest from Coinbase, and the guest, he enjoyed writing music, creating music, but he was he admitted that he just doesn't have a voice. He cannot sing, but AI has kind of given him that voice to release his own music. And he ended up releasing a song called Stablecoin for Coinbase as well, or in his own name. So I'm curious, looking ahead, what role do you see SoundExchange playing as new technologies like generative AI become more mainstream in music creation, and that barrier gets lowered further to allow anybody to create music? What do you see happening here? How's it evolving?
I think there's definitely a role for SoundExchange to play in the AI world. If you think about it, our core competency now, as we sit here today, think about what we do. We represent an entire industry. We work across a huge number of platforms with tons of data, tons of usage, tons of participants. We collect all that usage information and pay it out to 800,000 accounts every month. Now, that's small scale compared to AI, but it's fundamentally very similar to what needs to happen in the AI world. Put aside the music industry for a minute. Just speaking about it from, societal perspective or an economic perspective. AI, we have to figure out a way for AI to help compensate the people who provide the cultural input in these multi-trillion-dollar companies that they're going to create, right? Our culture and our economy and who we are as people is just not going to be the same if we can't participate in this wealth. So our superpower of sort of big data and lots of users, lots of owners, you can imagine a world where that could be deployed to help the AI companies most efficiently figure out how to compensate the people that they train their data on.
And I think there's a real pressure on us all to be in a state of almost continuous learning, to stay not just ahead, but maybe even just up to speed with the pace of technological change. Now, you're in an area which is heavily influenced by technology. I've got to ask, where or how do you self-educate? Any tips? How do you help lead the way here and not get left behind?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot to read on this. When you think about all the different places you can go for information and all the opinions. I mean, obviously, I try to stay up on all of that. But I think, if you're asking what's the best way that I stay connected, it's really through teaching. I actually teach a class at Georgetown Law School on music law, and ironically, in teaching, it helps me learn. Because first off, I have to sort of be up on what's happening in the world in order to be able to discuss it with the class. But to be totally honest, Neil, what is even more beneficial is what I learn from the students, what they bring to the fore. They help keep me in touch with what the younger generation is thinking about, with trends that I might not have been aware of. And by the way, perspectives that I might not have because I'm not quite that young. I'm still young, Neil, but not that young. So I don't know if it's... if it's sort of ironic, but the act of teaching and trying to impart what I know about the industry to the next generation, that very act makes me learn tons in return. So I don't know if that's probably an unusual way to answer that question, but that's the truth.
No, not at all. I think it's a beautiful way to answer. And it's not just about learning ourselves, it's learning from others and those different perspectives. And I think that is something that often gets missed. So thank you for raising that today.
It's funny. I have a saying, every time I meet someone, there's everybody you talk to in the industry or anywhere, there's always something you can learn from them. And I have a saying that I rarely learn anything when I'm talking. So, listening is also very important of that whenever you're talking with anybody. That's the best way to learn sometimes.
100%. And for anyone listening, maybe they want to dig a little bit deeper on anything we talked about today or contact you or your team. Where would you like to point everyone?
Well, there's several places you can go. Obviously, our website, www.soundexchange.com. We have a lot of FAQs there and even some video FAQs. They can, of course, follow us on social, right? We're on TikTok, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, Threads, all of them. And if you're interested more about that American Music Fairness Act and our fight to get the $12 billion U.S. terrestrial radio industry to pay for its main input. If you're interested in that, you can go to musicfairnessaction.org, musicfairnessaction.org, and there's a lot of background there on our fight to get fairness and payment in that world.
Awesome. Well, I'll have links to everything you mentioned there. Make it easy for people to get hold of you and find out more information about what you're doing, no matter what your age is. It seems like you've got all bases covered there. And for me, I just love talking with you today about how the music industry is better balancing innovation and artist protection in this era of rapid technological change, particularly AI's impact on creator equity and the business of music and copyright rights. I've learned so much, and I hope everyone listening has. So thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure. Really enjoyed this chat, and I'm happy to do it anytime you like.
We wrap up our conversation with Michael today. I find myself reflecting on just how much we take for granted each time we hit play or turn on the radio. Whether it be fair royalties or global advocacy, to the ethical use of AI. SoundExchange is standing at the crossroads of tradition and innovation. And they're proving that technology can indeed protect creativity rather than replace it. But what do you think? How should we balance the rise of generative AI with the irreplaceable value of human artistry? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so please share your take with me. techblogwriteroutlook.com, at LinkedIn, X, Instagram, TikTok. I'm at Neil C. Hughes on everything, so send me a message. But until next time, keep listening, keep learning, stay curious, and I'll speak with you all again soon. Bye for now.